the presidential spokesman, Daniel Bwala, attributing food price reduction to crackdown on insecurity in Nigeria. So the special advisor to the president on policy communication, who is Daniel Bwala, has credited the recent decline in food prices to the Bola Tinubu's administration's aggressive efforts in tackling insecurity. So in a post on X on Monday, he says he dismissed claims that the price reduction was driven by increased importation. Instead, he asserted that improved security conditions have restored confidence in the agricultural sector, leading to increased local production. So you talked about many things, but first, let me react to what you said about the NBS, the National Bureau of Statistics, providing the details that the facts are there. So I don't think that because the NBS is the Office of Statistics and will have certain details, it excuses a ministry saddled with the responsibility of monitoring trade and investment from actually giving details of its activities, how the policies being made by the executive arm of government is impacting on trade. That's one. Now, coming to the aspect of food prices, when we say 25%, there's been 25% reduction, and we want to generalize on a lot of food items. I want to tell a different lie by saying that's not exactly correct. Because if you go to the market, if you have been to the market in the month of February, if you've been to the market so far in the month of March, you will discover that some food prices that we saw a drop in the month of January, which we can attribute a lot of reasons to it, started going back to their former prices. So we can, because the price of rice has reduced, maybe one or two items, we cannot just put a carpet on it and say there's been price reduction in food items. Yeah, yes, maybe a little, but some have gone back to the prices. Now, you know that in January, because a lot of persons will stock on food items during December, so there's less demand for some of the food items, and we can also add other reasons to it. So there's a drop in the prices. Now, coming to us being able to sell food items to China. Let's even look at the agricultural sector. Who are those even doing the mechanized farming in Nigeria? Apart from a few big farms here and there, we also have also have China involved a lot in agriculture in Nigeria. So I think that except we begin to put things right in place and be intentional about how we do things, it's going to be the reverse. It's going to be Nigeria buying food from China. We already have China into food processing in Nigeria. And so when you go to some supermarkets, you're seeing packaged food produced by Chinese companies. What are Nigerian companies doing? Yes, we have a few of them, but they need to be more empowered to improve their capacity.
Okay, so now, first of all, let me start from this China food you talked about and what you just mentioned, that China, they need to, if we are going to allow them operate in food production in Nigeria, then the government must be specific in policy direction and putting its foot firmly on the ground. Look, China, no importation. No importation. We cannot allow our country to be a dumping ground. If you're going to produce food, you will source your local materials from Nigeria. You will build your manufacturing hub here in Nigeria, and you are going to produce food, you are going to carry out your food production activities using local resources, using the local workforce, and using the local raw materials here in Nigeria. No importation, except you are importing machinery or you are bringing in other form of raw materials that are scarce, that are not easy to come by in Nigeria for that purpose. Apart from those conditions, you cannot do otherwise. The government must do that. Why must the government take that path? Because it needs to protect local producers, local food manufacturers in Nigeria, so that we can save our local manufacturers and completely selling out our country or the food producing sector into the hand of foreigners. That needs to be established. If we leave that particular aspect, and let me come down to where Mr. Bwala talked about singing the song and the praise of the current administration with regards to food production. Of course, we have those who are trying to balance issues, telling Mr. Bwala that, look, if there is anything like that, it is because of the recent surge in food importation into the country, and he's trying to dismiss that, and he's talking about the agriculture and the much yields. I know that very recently we recorded about $2.something billion in the export of non-oil products in Nigeria. However, let's look at Nigeria. Nigeria is the highest producer of yam and cassava in the world. In the world. And Nigeria has a yam industry that is evaluated at $30 billion. Now, as a result of insecurity, you look at it, there has been a consecutive and consistent decline in the production of yam, coming from 2023 down to 2025. An industry that was evaluated for $30 billion is now being evaluated for $20 billion. And yet, we are not meeting the local production. We're not harnessing all our materials or all our efforts and machinery to reach that capacity. The United States import yam from Nigeria, so I'm not completely in disagreement with Doc when he says we can do that agricultural produce to China. United States, other countries, including Switzerland,
have we developed capacity to do that?
They depend on Nigeria for that for yam itself, and Nigerians export yams in manufactured and processed form out of Nigeria. So if we are going to take advantage of that, the government needs to look at that. But now that industry, that particular sector of agriculture is undergoing serious crisis because the government has not completely, or it has not performed to the expectations of Nigeria in dealing with the issues of insecurity. If you go, and that's the biggest market in yam production in the country is situated in Benue State. And we know that Benue State has continually been in the front line when it comes to insecurity, terrorism and banditry activities, where farmers no longer go to the farm. Some of them are relocated from their farm settlement. They've left farming completely because their lives are not safe. If the government is going to be talking about upping the ante in agriculture, then it must treat it the root cause. If it is shying away from nipping in the bud cases of insecurity, most especially in the terrains where we are producing these yams and other agricultural produce, then I think it is just treating the issue with kids.
But the special advisor on policy says that the government has tackled insecurity.
As a people, is that somehow we don't have a heart of gratitude.
How do you mean?
When people make efforts.
How do you mean? We need to understand what you mean.
People are quick to dismiss positive and amplify the negative. You need to look at the graphs, for example, in terms of security, and see it between 2014, when we were at the highest, and 2025, where we are. In short, recently...
So what does the graph say?
Recently, you find that the graph is plummeting, and that is lower today than it was ever.
Is that what is on paper or what's in reality?
What is on the ground?
Because we also find that cases of kidnapping are increasing in other states.
No, it's not increasing.
Are we sure about that, though?
I'm very, very sure. You see,
because there are reports.
Yes, I'm very, very sure. You see, the truth of the matter is that you have to compare apple with apple. You look at what was about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where we were, and see what is happening. Yes, there are also they're not saying that it is completely gone, but it's saying that a whole lot of effort is made. If you talk to experts on security issues today, whether they are local...
We did talk to one yesterday.
Whether they are local or...
On the show.
Or people who are outside, they can tell you that significant progress have been made. And no little wonder you also saw that even reflected that where we were 2 years ago in the terrorism index, we have made appreciable progress. And this we can be grateful to God for. That yes, we are not where we should be, but progress are being made. Yes, prices of food, are they going down? Yes. Whether it is 1% or 0%, if inflation increased by 0.1%, people shout. But if it's also go down by 0.1%, people must also be able to say, oh, thank you for what you have done. Yeah, there are room for improvement. But this always trying to paint a picture that people are not doing enough.
Is anyone painting a picture here?
Yes, of course. I see that very glowingly.
No, we're not painting picture.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that when you have done one out of 10, that it should not be constructively criticized, because we have talked about what government needs to do as well. Yes, we acknowledge, but that does not stop us from talking about that there is greater room for improvement.
There's room for improvement, but you have to acknowledge what is being done.
We have to acknowledge, but Doc,
yes.
you cannot say that we need to have a heart of gratitude for the effort people are making. This is their core responsibility. If I come to work, I do not expect my employer to show me gratitude for coming to work. Yes. Same thing when they are doing their job. They do not expect that Nigerians show them gratitude for doing their job. It is the responsibility of government to ensure the protection of lives and property of its citizens.
Yes, they are doing their work. And of course, what I'm saying to you is the fact, you are not paying them anything to say, oh, yes, we have seen that progress is being made. 2 weeks ago, fuel was selling at 960. Today, fuel is selling at 870. There's a progress. No doubt about that. You must acknowledge it. You can't just say, oh, they are lying or they are painting.
We never said they're lying. On the table here, we have acknowledged, and we've also talked about areas. We have, except you haven't been listening to what we're saying here.
Just acknowledge it first.
No, you cannot say that we must continue acknowledging without talking about the areas where they need to improve.
Yes,
I started by saying that in the area of, I talked about the prices of food items that have dropped, but it is not widespread. That's an acknowledgement.
Which of the food item in your own rating has not dropped?
Okay, we talked about rice, we talked about beans, but is that all?
Wait now.
I
only give you 2 examples.
Hold on. I mentioned rice, I mentioned beans that have reduced a bit, but not...
Onion, tomatoes, pepper. Can we continue this?
They have not reduced.
They have.
They have gone back to the prices that they were. They reduced in January, but they've gone back to the prices that they were.
That's not true.
If we talk about Gary, which is a staple food, that has not also reduced.
Absolutely not true. The price of Gary has also gone down significantly.
Significantly?
Oh, yes. And
maybe you and I need to go to the market to do a survey. I think we should do that.
Yes, of course, I can tell you. Because I also sell Gary, and I can tell you that.
Oh. He sells, but not to the retailer. So you probably sell at wholesale price. By the time he gets to the market, he sells at a different price.
Leave the different prices.
Doc, you and I need to get to the market.
Let's acknowledge what is being done.
Which
I'm not saying this is the best we can be. And that is why I said there's a whole lot that can still be done so that we can improve whatever that is being done. That's why I gave you the statistics, that between the second quarter, third quarter, and even the fourth quarter, the contribution of agriculture to the GDP has been falling. I acknowledge it has been falling. But that is not to say that we are not doing what should be done.
Doc,
so the regime has
I have a report for you from the producer. She says she went to the market and she bought pepper, and it was expensive. Again, you and I need to go to the market.
So against I should compare the price against what price?
Against what?
December price.
What obtained in January?
December
price. What obtained early February?
So he should do the graph. She should do the graph so that you can see what the prices are. See, it's simple. You need to talk to farmers. You need to tell them.
But the farmers don't sell in the markets.
No. They don't need to sell in the market. You see, the thing is that
because we cannot judge from what the farmers sell. We can only judge from what sells at the market.
You can buy a bottle of water in a kiosk for 200 naira. And that same bottle of water, you can buy it in a 5-star hotel for 2,000 naira.
We're talking about market. That I don't think is a perfect comparison.
Does it alter that the producer is producing the same water with the same level of...
That is a different situation.
No, if the
sellers are selling at an expensive rate, it also determines
where food produce land, or you go to Alabarango, where food land on this other side, then you'll be able to determine that, yes, people have added their prices on the streets, but from the people who are bringing it to the major markets, that's where you can determine what price it is. So significantly, prices are going down. There's no doubt about that. But the point I'm making is that when people have done well, we should be able to be grateful to say somebody has made progress, irrespective of who is saying it. If the person who had made a progress or they are doing something and they cannot tell you what effort they have made and what result that is being achieved, and then we are attributing what is happening to other factors, when we have historical data that we can compare, then there's a problem.
Okay. So one aspect that we need to paint very clearly. So if we need to go back to where it all started, the status quo, where it all started. Let's say there had not been security before, then we started having security challenges. What was the situation on ground? How were we faring as a nation as regards agriculture? And we looked at all the indices and the price of foodstuff, the purchasing power of the average man on the street, how much they earn and how much they were able to save at the end of the month. And we put that into a graph and look at it in the spate of 20 years, spanning down to 2025, how the situation currently is now when terrorism came in and where terrorism has affected our agricultural sector at the moment and where it took price to. And now we are beginning to see some form of progress where in several administrations have put in their best and fighting and trying to tame terrorism to where we're going. It's not, we cannot compare it to the status quo where we were before now. However, I also would toe the line that since we got embroiled in the case of insecurity, we, at the moment now, we seem to be coming down where we are taming toward normalcy. Not normalcy to, normalcy in the fact that we are beginning to overcome this particular scourge and this particular crisis. And if we continue in that spate, but continuity in that spate, in that pace, will determine that there is political will from the chief executive. Now, I am not referring to the personality or the person or of the current administration. I'm referring to the previous administration, the current administration, and subsequent administration that will come into place in governance in Nigeria. If we want us to be in that right path where we really go by the name, the giant of Africa, it must reflect in agriculture, it must reflect in energy, it must reflect in manufacturing, and it must translate to us being sensitive and driven by the blueprint we have on ground to protect our local industries from foreign invaders. Because some of the reasons why we are not doing as good as we should be doing in agriculture, it can be tied to insecurity. And if the government can tame insecurity completely or bring it to the barest minimum, then I can say we will begin to look at ourselves to satisfy our local demand of agricultural produce and even also to satisfy foreign demands for our produce in Nigeria. So China, as we speak, they kept on diversifying. They came in through infrastructure. Now it's onto food production. Now it's onto oil and gas. And before you know it, they will be determining the direction of our economy here in Nigeria. And I want to quickly tell Doc not to sing the praise of the government when it comes to the oil, the price of oil in 960 naira. I don't want to go ahead of myself and how Dangote brought it to 800 naira threshold. Because as we speak, there is a policy on ground to actually remove that benefit from the face of Nigeria. And it's going to take us back to Babylon.
We will not be able to say that for his attitude. And of course, we also need to know what dynamics that are playing out. But the point I'm making is this. Look at the flashpoints. It's simple. So you can call people from Niger State, flashpoints. You can call people from Benue State. You can call people from Taraba State. You can call people from Southern Kaduna. These were huge flashpoints yesterday. But what's the situation there right now? Now, these are the things that we have to look at, that to say, okay, is effort being made? Yes. Efforts are being made. Is it total? No. But the little that is being made had to be acknowledged. Because the people who are doing this to ensure that we find that peace, they must be encouraged by our words. That's the point. So if you go to these neighborhoods that I just mentioned, even in Zamfara, even in Borno, I had opportunity to reach out to somebody who was telling me how much he has made in terms of beans plantation from Borno State. So all of
recently.
Oh yes, all these things are issues that we as a people can look at in the face and say, are we making progress? Yes, we are. But are we in Kenya yet? No. So what our appreciation does is to encourage those of our gallant men and women who are there night and day saying to ensure that the security we enjoy is, but which country really has absolute security?
Okay, we need to wrap up on this. We're not talking about absolute security, and it is not as if anyone has said that efforts have not been done. We're talking about adequate reporting here. So if you've done this, you tell us in what areas this progress
Yeah,
are
but
recorded.
it is your responsibility to look for the data.
No, it is not our responsibility.
Because the person
It
who
is not our
actually
responsibility.
puts the data on the report, the data are there.
It is
But
not our responsibility.
If you ignore it,
No,
then
Doc.
you can't blame that.
No,
because
Doc. It is not our responsibility
No,
to
you
go
fact
fishing.
check the data.
Hold on, Doc.
That
It
the
is-
data
it is
are not correct.
It is not our responsibility to go fishing for these details. These details should be there. In the same breath that you're saying we've done X, Y, Z in this area, there should be a follow-up to say, in this state, this is what we have been able to achieve. It is not the responsibility of Nigerians to go sourcing for the details of what you're saying. Neither is it the responsibility
You
of
as a
the
journalist,
NBS. Yes.
It's your responsibility
It is
to
also
give the public adequate facts. So
It is
if
the
a man says,
responsibility-
if I say, okay, this is my data, your responsibility as a journalist is to say no, because I have the contrary data. And if you don't have the contrary data, it will be wrong for you to dismiss
We have not
what somebody has
dismissed.
given.
We have not dismissed what they have
That
given.
is not
We are
correct.
saying that it is their responsibility. That in the same breath you say you've achieved this, there should be a follow-up on that same report. That these are the details of the report. It is not the responsibility, even if the journalists will go to find out if what you have said, because they have to fact check, it doesn't excuse your responsibility of doing adequate reporting. Let's call a spade here.
Yeah.
And that's what we're saying.
Yeah, but
and then on the other
I
hand,
don't see anything that can be plainer than somebody says, we have a trade surplus of 16 billion. That's a figure.
no, it is not plain enough.
No,
when you don't tell us
your
how the trade...
responsibility-
No,
your
Doc.
responsibility
No, Doc.
is to fact check, to say, no, it is not 16 billion. Now,
Doc.
if you don't have that data, you just accept what's given to you.
No,
because
Doc.
that is the data
That's-
available. So you can know
that's
from
poor
your...
reporting.
You
That's
cannot,
poor
you cannot
reporting.
from your head.
It is not from...
Because
that's
if you
poor
say we have made
reporting,
progress, it
Doc.
have been vague. But here he's saying we have made a surplus of 16
It
billion.
is still vague
You have
when you
a
don't
contrary
tell us.
report.
It is still vague when you don't tell us the sectors of the economy that contributed to that and the measure that they contributed. It is still vague.
No, it's not vague.
It is vague.
It's you to provide an alternative data that contradicts
Because
what is presented.
the approach, first of all, it is not to be defensive so that there is nobody contests what you were given. It is for you to provide data enough for the common Nigerian to understand what it is you're saying, not depending on journalists who will go fact check and say, oh, when they said this, this is what they meant. That's what I'm saying.
NBC report.
Is NBC
Which is-
now the
which is
the one
referred-
making
You mean
the
the
statement?
NBS?
NBS
Is NBS now the one
report
making the statement?
that is referred to. It's a full detailed report. Your responsibility as a journalist is to go read that report. The details you are looking for is in that report.
Doc, there are ministries, there are people saddled with responsibilities. First, they should make their reporting clear before we're looking at the breakdown from NBS, which will be a more detailed. But first, when you're saying we've had $16 billion dollars of surplus in trade, I expect that there should be pointers on that same report to the areas that contributed to that, not Nigerians now going to do a fact-checking not journalists helping you to do a fact-checking. It's your job.
It's not even appealing to you. The man has done his job.
He hasn't done it
completely. It's you who has not done your job.
He hasn't done his job completely.
And you, as a journalist, you have a responsibility to do your job.
He hasn't done his job
And what is our
completely.
responsibility is to look at what the report out there is, and then to be able to now come out and contradict. Yes,
he hasn't done his job.
He has responsibility.
And we have even looked at the report to say, if you say that is because you were saying that there's a 25% reduction in prices, and we say let's look at it. Is it widespread? Can we say generally there's been a 25% reduction in prices? We've also checked things that they have said. Is this the reality on ground? And we find that for some of them, it is not the reality. So there's a difference between what is on paper and what Nigerians see actually.